Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jukka Vesa. I am the sales engineer for Zeiser's Nordic region. And today we are going to talk about our SD-WAN solution for our VPN series devices. We will have a Q&A session at the end. So if there are any questions during this presentation, please write them into the questions or chat section, and we will cover them at the end. Thank you. So let's start. First, a few words about our Nebula in general. So Nebula is currently divided in two different sections. Sorry. We have the Nebula Orchestrator, the SD-WAN solution, which is the topic of this webinar. And then we have the Nebula Control Center, or NCC, which provides management monitoring for all our cloud managed network devices. So Nebula Orchestrator is the WAN. So what is an SD-WAN? SD-WAN comes from a software-defined wide area network. And it is there for optimizing your WAN connections between your locations. So with optimizing connections between offices. It's there to replace ISP methods like MPLS, and therefore being far more cost effective as well. And SD-WAN solutions have been out there for a while now, but they've been mostly just for enterprise use, simply because of the price tag of them. What we are trying to do is make them more affordable and give the same type of solution, or the same SD-WAN solution, for SMB market. So just splitting up what is the demands of the day and the challenges for small and medium businesses, being the end users in this case, and then the VARs and the MSPs, or multi-service providers, meaning you guys. So looking from the company's perspective, they need greater resilience on cloud, since more and more services and file host, file shares, everything is being hosted on cloud-based services rather than local services, servers at the office. And due to that fact, we of course need the internet connections to be more reliable, because if we lose connection to our servers, then we pretty much don't have any work to be done, and that of course costs money, and people drink too much coffee during that time. And since they are not anymore in the local network, so we need the WAN connections to be as fast as possible, so we can get to our files and download our files without waiting too much. Of course, the data transfer needs to be secure, since we are talking about company internal data here that we are moving around. And that's why we need secure VPN tunnels between these locations and the cloud platforms. It needs to be scalable. So when we install new offices, new branches, it needs to be easily scalable to the same solution and with minimal configuration needed. And of course, we would like to do this as cheaply as possible, meaning that the devices should be affordable to all. And of course, the installation cost and time needs to be reduced to a minimum to keep those costs low as well. So from the VAR and MSP side, we need to try and maximize what type of connectivity we have available, meaning that we ran into scenarios quite often that we do not have the fast fiber connections available at that location. So we basically need to get by with what we have. So being it an ADSL connection or an LTE connection, and we can combine these and get the most out of them. Needs easier control over deployment and management. So all control and all management happens from the same easy to use platform there, where you can monitor all your devices registered to that certain site organization or group. We will go into more details on these later. Reducing complexity, of course, meaning that when you pile up the tunnel amount and the location amount, you need to create more and more tunneling. And if that process would be automated for you, of course, you wouldn't need to do the configuration manually. And of course, due to that fact as well, since you do not need to create tens, possibly even hundreds of VPN tunnels between different locations, troubleshooting becomes more easy as well, since you do not need to go through each and everything and find the mistake where you have made it or what has gone wrong. Removing bottlenecks from client networks. So if we, for example, use a hub and spoke VPN scenario where one location is working as a hub and every VPN tunnel in that organization is routed through that location becomes a bottleneck, being it the capability of the gateway device itself or the ISP connections available at that site. But if everything is routed that way, you will have a bottleneck at some point. So simplifying network diversity, as mentioned earlier, utilizing all sorts of different types of ISP connections that are available on each location, since that usually varies quite a lot. Gaining control over traffic shaping, meaning that we are able to control the bandwidth and select or automated selection on which connection to use on which type of application. For example, low latency lines for VoIP calls, or when we just need bandwidth to download something from an FTP server, we might use an LTE connection or whichever connection is fastest available, or combine multiples if we have the bandwidth. Okay, and then we start talking about how VPN tunnels are traditionally nowadays made and what are the weak points of the traditional VPN network and what do you have to do to actually get the configuration and the branches running. So we have, in this example, we have two locations. We have a site in Denmark and a site in UK. And if we would create a VPN tunnel between these two locations, we of course need to configure both of these gateways. All good and fine. To determine if the connection is alive or not, we are able to set an alive check, which is based on either the port being physically up or down, or something called a live check, which basically means that if the other end responds to ping or not. But that's quite black and white. So the connection is either live or it is not alive. It doesn't monitor the quality of the connection anyway, so if the line is degraded or not. It's also fairly complex to set a different type of bandwidth management rules through these VPN tunnels, so which applications, for example, have the priority, etc. And when we start adding sites to this organization, for example, another location in the UK, and all these three sites need to talk to each other, but the traffic is still flowing through the Danish site. So once again, we need to configure the VPN tunnels from site 2 to Denmark, and we also need to create policy routes to both of the UK sites to tell them that the other site is found on the hub. So basically, we need to create rules to tell which way the traffic should flow and through what location. And when we add more and more sites, of course, that means more and more policy routes, more IPsec tunnels from site to site, and it also creates a bottleneck from the hub location, which in this example is the Danish site. So it becomes congested and the traffic from site to another slows down because of that. We can of course try and get around it by creating direct site-to-site tunnels from each location to another. But that of course once again means more and more configuration, more and more time used on doing the manual configuration, and of course adding complexity when it comes to troubleshooting at some points. And if it happens that we are in a good situation that we have multiple WAN connections available to each location, we of course would like to utilize these connections as best as we can. And in this example, we have a primary connection with fiber and a secondary connection with a DSL or an LTE. So since the monitoring of the connections is fairly black and white, is it up or down, but it's not able to recognize if the line is degraded, having packet loss, for example. So it is not able to switch to the secondary connection, which probably would give us better results. So we could start seeing Skype calls dropping out, pixelating, voice dropping out, cutting off, these kind of symptoms, even degraded on download speeds. So that is something that we are not able to recognize on standard VPN tunnels as we have them on now. So Nebula Orchestrator, as a summary, provides you zero-touch provisioning, which is installation and configuring of the gateways as easy as we can possibly do it. Dynamic path selection. So it real-time monitors each and every path that is available between the locations and selecting the optimal path based on the application, based on certain factors. We will go into more details on these after this slide. WAN optimization, so optimizing different WAN connections as best as possible. Content filtering, so we are able to block, warn, or prioritize different URLs and monitor that what's being browsed in our network. Application intelligence, so we are able to identify the applications that are used on each site and act accordingly, meaning once again, for example, optimizing Skype calls, so we do not see the degrading of the or picture pixelation or anything like that. Dynamic mesh VPN, so we are dynamically able to create tunnels between locations to give the optimal results on throughput and latency. And the tunneling creation just happens in the background with users being unaware that anything is happening, except that they get the better results when they transfer data or something like that. All right, so more in details on WAN optimization and application intelligence. So these features optimize the connection based on TCP acceleration, latency, packet loss, and jitter. So which connection to site to another is the best available for that certain application's needs. So once again, FTP, for example, for throughput, Skype calls, VoIP calls for latency and packet loss, for example. So we can, of course, set different types of parameters manually, but it's an automated procedure by standard, and it downloads more throughput and services like VoIP calls, less latency. Dynamic path selection. We constantly monitor the best quality of the connection for that certain usage. And if the primary connection gets degraded, we will start using the secondary connection or the secondary path to that certain location, and constantly basically using both of these paths seamlessly, optimizing per usage what path to actually use. And once again, user is totally unaware that this is happening on the background. Dynamic mesh VPN. So if we have multiple sites in our organization, the site in the UK tries to connect or connects to the site in Italy, and the connection is initialized through the hub location in Denmark. But after the connection is initialized, the locations dynamically create another VPN tunnel directly between these two locations. Once again, for optimizing speed, latency, etc. And basically, user does not see anything else than the upgraded download speeds that he would see from the through the hub. And of course, it's less strain for the hub, so removing the bottlenecks from the Danish office. And once the traffic is being stopped, of course, the tunnel is being stopped as well. And when another connection is being created, the process goes over and over again. So you don't need to worry about creating each site-to-site tunnel once again. WAN optimization. So we did a transfer test between our HQ office and our German office for a Ubuntu image file, 1.9 gigs. And without WAN optimization, we got 300 kilobits per second, and the transfer time took 2 hours and 40 minutes. And you can see the connection details below, so it's quite of a poor connection. When we enabled SD-WAN optimization, the transfer time took only 10 minutes with 24 megabits per second. So we see a clear and a massive improvement with and without WAN optimization, especially on poor connections. And from this chart, we can clearly see that the worse the connection, the more benefits we see on the SD-WAN solution and the WAN optimization part of it. So line number 1 is pretty much an optimal connection that there could be available. So we see, of course, some improvement, but not that much. The more the latency, more packet loss, more jitter, the more benefits we see from WAN optimization. Okay, so then we will watch a short video on throughput testing with iPerf through one line with WAN optimization enabled and one line with WAN optimization disabled. So I will shut up for a while and let you guys enjoy the video. So we clearly see quite a massive improvement with and without a SD-WAN. So let's move to the management part of the Nebula Orchestrator. So we support a 3-tier management, and if we go from down to up, site-wide management would be your local site-specific settings per each gateway or each site. So you can, of course, go into more detail when you are doing site-based settings. Per organization, you can do organization-wide settings and, of course, organization-wide VPN tunnels, etc. And you can, for example, push certain rules like guest and corporate network subnets or interfaces to all locations or policies or pretty much everything. You can do organization based and then saving time so you don't need to do configuration per site when some changes happen or when you are just installing new branch offices to that organization. So they will be automatically populated with the generic settings of that organization. We also have a group level available where you are able to combine organizations to each other as well. So companies to another, or it's a matter of just setting up is the group, the actual company, and the organizations are different parts of the companies, or is the organization just the company itself. It's just a matter of how you want to set it up, basically. Security features that the SD-WAN solution offers is, of course, basic firewall rules, geo-enforcer, where you are able to block a certain region or a certain country, content filtering for managing and blocking and warning, and of course monitoring the web browsing, application patrol or application intelligence, which enables you to optimize and block certain applications and configure per those, and of course monitor based them as well. Going from a Nebula Orchestrator managed gateway to standalone is fairly easy. So basically you just, to go to a Nebula Orchestrator managed gateway, you just add the gateway to Nebula Orchestrator and then populate the settings to that certain gateway. And going to standalone is basically just removing the gateway from the Nebula Orchestrator and doing a factory reset to the gateway. Nothing more complex than that. And you can move back and forth depending on your need of the device. And if you just want to test the SD-WAN solution, you can just feel free to do so without having been tied to either or. So you are able to move back and forth. Deploying the gateways is as simple as plugging either in the USB stick or clicking a script linked on the email. So basically you add the device to Nebula Orchestrator, which then sends you an email with a script built in and an attachment that you can send to a USB stick and then plug in the USB stick to the device, reboot it. The device needs to be on factory default settings because of admin passwords, etc. So it just boots from the USB stick the first time, then it downloads all the settings from the USB stick and then starts working as a Nebula Orchestrator managed device. Or the other option is to plug in your laptop to the LAN side of the device and run the script that is in the email, and it will automatically open up a browser window and run all the settings to your gateway basically leaving the expertise needed on site to actually doing the installation of the device very minimal, since you don't need to do any setting work in the web GUI or the CLI interface of the device. So you basically just need to know how to plug in a USB stick and reboot the device, or double click a script on an email when your laptop is plugged into the device. And that's it. All other settings comes from the cloud. So simple as possible. Connecting sites to each other. So in this example, we are looking at sites within one organization. So we select which site is the hub or the main location, and we select the branch locations, which originally talk through the hub location, but then again form direct connections between branch locations if we allow that. So tick the branch-to-branch VPN available to this location as well. So configuration made fairly simple. You just tick on what you want and the SD-WAN solution handles the rest. Also works on a client to site scenarios. And talking about client to site scenarios, we utilize the L2TP client, built-in L2TP client of the device. It currently is available on Windows, Mac OS, and iOS. So from the Nebula orchestrator, when you configure the user, you of course configure their email address as well. And then you send the script by an email to that certain user, which then again clicks the link open or activates the script, which populates the configuration to the device's L2TP VPN client, and done. Then you just connect your VPN tunnel to your gateway, and then you have a client-to-site scenario. Nothing more needed. Of course, admin rights to the owner of that PC helps, since then they can actually, the script can actually run. Okay, then we move onwards to the hardware part of the solution. So the SD-WAN solution is available on the VPN series, VPN 50, 100 and 300 models. And the major difference is, of course, the bigger the gateway, the faster it is, as you can see on the slide. But the VPN 50 and 100 models are fanless, so they produce no noise whatsoever, so very friendly for office installations where you do not have an isolated cabinet for your networking equipment. The two smaller devices also have predefined port roles, so a predefined number of LAN and WAN ports, which then again VPN 300, all the ports are configurable, meaning that you can select as many WAN or LAN ports as you wish. Each device also includes one SFP port, which is an optional port, so you can set it to WAN or LAN or anything in between, but then you need to create your own rules. Okay, so those are the devices that support this solution, and all devices come with 1 year of the SD-WAN, full SD-WAN license. The differences between the full license and the SD-WAN license is that the free license is missing the dynamic path selection, WAN optimization, content filtering, and geo-enforcer. And it also, the monitoring page frequency is 10 minutes rather than 3 minutes or 3 seconds in live mode with the full solution. And it also keeps less log and monitoring data in store with the free solution. But then again, as said, all the devices come with the full SD-WAN license for a year, so you can feel free to try and activate that when you wish. Okay, so now I would go through if there are any questions from the devices or the presentation that I have given. The question is, not sure I get it, VPN 300 etc. in Nebula Orchestrator or Orchestra. I'm not really sure do I understand the question, but yes, all the VPN devices that you see here support Nebula Orchestrator. These cannot be integrated to NCC or Nebula Control Center, just to be clear between the definition. Different devices for Nebula Orchestrator and different devices for Nebula Control Center. So I will keep the webinar running for about 5 minutes more if there are any more questions. Everyone that has attended the webinar will receive an email after the webinar with a nice a nice surprise for a nice price for a VPN series device. I apparently can't speak English anymore. But I will keep the webinar running for a few minutes more if there are any more questions. If there are not, I would like to thank everybody for participating. But as said, I will stay online for a while. If you figure out some questions later on, you can of course contact me by an email or a telephone. My email address is jukka@zyzel.fi. Yeah, okay. I missed the start. Is the webinar recorded? Yes, it is, and you can download it after the webinar. Okay, we have a new question. What item is used after 1 year of Nebula Orchestrator? I am not sure what you are trying to ask here, but if you do not renew the license, the Nebula Orchestrator will drop to the free version, which will remove these functions from the Nebula Orchestrator. You can still manage your devices and nothing drastic happens, nothing will be removed or anything. You will just lose these 4 features basically. Hi, if there is an offshore client location does not have SD-WAN device set up, how can we manage this part? Well, manually, of course. So you need to create, manually configure a VPN tunnel between the location in the SD-WAN setup that you wish and to that other location. What item should I order after the 1 year free Nebula Orchestrator? I unfortunately do not have the license code here, but I am sure you are able to find it in your distributors distributors list. So it's a license basically that you just order and input to your organization or to your Nebula orchestrator. You say it's for VPN series. I assume the USG series of the same generation can also do this. Well, two things. No, USGs and the VPN devices are different hardware generations altogether, and only these three devices support this solution, unfortunately. So no USGs for the SD-WAN solution. Is the client VPN a separate item? No, it is not. It utilizes the device's own built-in L2TP client. For example, Windows and macOS has their own built-in L2TP client, which the script just sets up. So the client is already at that device, or the VPN client software is already at that device. The script just sets it up correctly. Is it necessary that all locations should have SD-WAN device set up? Not necessary, but to get the full benefit, of course. So if you do not have an SD-WAN counterpart in the other end, it will not be optimized the best. What if one of the remote locations is just a router or a firewall? Do you get the SD-WAN benefit there also? So no, unfortunately, you do not. Any performance difference between a USG and a VPN product series? Well, that we would have to take device by device, and the easiest way of doing that is comparing data sheets. So, for example, ftp.zyzel. Your country code, FI for Finland, for example, or SE for Sweden. There you can easily find the documentation for each and every device and look up the data sheets. And of course, if you have certain models in mind, you can always send me an email and we can look them through model by model. My email address is Jukka, so JUKKA @zyzel.fi. I will write it to the chat, since native Finnish names might not be clear for everyone. You are very welcome. You too. Thank you all for participating. I think we have run out of questions now, but if you think of anything afterwards, just as said, please contact me or please contact your sales representative, and we will look the questions through and have the answers for you. Thank you all for participating and have a great rest of the week. Thank you. Bye bye.